Part 3. Standard Operating Procedure 3. Theta Clearing. Chapter 27. Standard Operating Procedure, Issue 3. Standard Operating Procedure for Theta Clearing is the backbone of processing in Scientology. It is easily applied, but the auditor should have an excellent command of all types of processing in order to use it more successfully. SOP is most easily applied and most successfully by an auditor who is a Theta Clear. Auditors who are not Theta Clear seldom understand it, and a low-toned, uncleared auditor who cannot himself leave the body very often acts to pin a pre-clear inside his body. It is noteworthy that many auditors have been unable to obtain success with Theta Clearing before they themselves have been cleared. But immediately after the auditor was cleared, he was successful with each successive case without exception. The fear of some Thetans, from various causes, of leaving the body causes the auditor who is a Thetan to make other Thetans stay in bodies. And it is actually quite dangerous to be audited by auditors who are not Theta Clears. The process is not dangerous. Unclear auditors are. Definitions. Thetan. This term designates the beingness of the individual, the awareness of awareness unit, that quantity and identity which is the pre-clear. One does not speak of my Thetan any more than he would speak of my me. Persons referring to the Thetan in such a way as to make the Thetan a third party to the body and the person are not only incorrect, they betoken by this a bad state of aberration. Auditor. The person who audits, who computes and listens, a practitioner of Dianetics and Scientology. SOP Theta Clearing is best done by an auditor who has been Theta Cleared. A 5, see below under Standard Operating Procedure, commonly acts to force the pre-clear to stay in his body, even while pretending to free the pre-clear from his body. Location. The Thetan is an energy unit which is located in the center of the skull. It is conceived to be small, but is as large as the pre-clear believes it to be. A Thetan who cannot leave the current body very often believes himself to be holding on only to the current body, and yet in actuality is holding on to a facsimile of an earlier body. The Thetan also believes himself to be the size of some earlier body. A Thetan from the 5th Invader Force believes himself to be a very strange insect-like creature with unthinkably horrible hands. He believes himself to be occupying such a body, but is in actuality simply a unit capable of producing space, time, energy, and matter. Self-determinism. Self-determinism is a relative state of ability to determine location in time and space, and to create and destroy space, time, energy, and matter. If one can locate his facsimiles and ridges in time and space, if one is able to place persons and objects in the past, present, and future in time and space, he can be considered to have high self-determinism. If one's facsimiles place him in time and space, if people can easily place one in time and space in the past, present, or future, one's self-determinism is low. Willingness and unwillingness to locate things in time and space are the key relative states of sanity. Illusion. Any idea, space, energy, object, or time concept which one creates himself. Reality. That agreement upon illusion which became the messed universe. Delusion. Things not of one's own creation or of the messed universe which locate one in time and space. Certainty. One is certain on a plus or minus basis, and one can be equally certain on either. One can be certain a thing is not real, or he can be equally certain that it is real. There are 3 sides to this. One is certain a thing is his own illusion. This is the highest level. One is certain that a thing is a messed universe reality, illusion. One can be certain that a thing is a delusion. Any certainty is a knowingness. Knowingness is sanity. Thus, we have 3 routes of certainty by which to approach knowingness. Knowingness. Knowingness depends upon certainty. Aberration. Aberration depends upon uncertainty. Theta perception. That which one perceives by radiating toward an object and from the reflection perceiving various characteristics of the object, such as size, odor, tactile, sound, color, etc. Theta perception is increased by drilling in certainties as above. Theta perception is dependent upon willingness to handle energy and to create space, energy, and objects. In view of the fact that the meshed universe can be established easily to be an illusion, one must have an ability to perceive illusions before one can clearly perceive the meshed universe. The Thetan who cannot perceive the meshed universe easily will also be found to be incapable of handling and orienting other kinds of illusions with certainty. Theta perception is also a direct index to responsibility, for responsibility is the willingness to handle force. Meshed perception. Recordings the Thetan takes from the perception organs of the human body as a shortcut to perception, lazy perception. The body records actual wave emanations from the meshed universe. The Thetan uses these recordings. Considerably more data could be collected on this subject. Orientation. Determination of location in space and time and determination of energy quantity present. This applies to past, present, and future. Ridges. Solid accumulations of energy which are suspended in space and time. Ridges can be handled variously. They can also explode. Facsimiles. Energy reproductions of things in the various universes. They are fixed to ridges. End of terminal. A communication line to anything has the pre-clear at one end and something at the other end. When the end of the terminal is vacated, the flow dams and the pre-clear must fix the vacated end to his own body. This is the mechanics behind the loss which brings about grief. ARC lines can be mocked up and handled in the routine of creative processing, which process will resolve end-of-terminal difficulties. These terminals are quite visible to the Thetan, who sees them either wound around the body or extending to other bodies or reaching a considerable distance into space. The Thetan can actually yank on these terminals, even those which go into space, and free the other end, whether he perceives so or not, and so recover and dispose of such lines. Astral bodies. Somebody's delusion. Astral bodies are usually mock-ups which the mystic then tries to believe real. He sees the astral body as something else and then seeks to inhabit it in the most common practices of astral walking. Anyone who confuses astral bodies with Thetans is apt to have difficulty with theta clearing, for the two things are not the same order of similarity. The exteriorization of a Thetan, when actually accomplished, is so complete and thorough and is attended by so many other phenomena that anyone who has made an effort to relate these two things is quite certain to recant after he has been theta cleared. The most noteworthy difference is that the Thetan does not have a body. Production of illusion to which he then sought to assign meshed reality is probably the underlying factor which makes mysticism so aberrative. Data from India is knowingly or unknowingly booby-trapped, so that while it contains, if unevaluated and isolated, many essential truths, it contains as well directions which are certain to send the experimenter even more deeply into the unwanted state of becoming meshed. Until recently, the nearest one could come to studying the actuality of existence was through the field of mysticism, and its value should not be discounted. But its effect is to deliver an entirely opposite result to any experimenter luckless enough to hope to reach cause by becoming an effect, as required in mysticism. Seeing and feeling non-existences is frightening and harmful only when one seeks to believe them to be existences. Only when he knows he has created them can he obtain a certainty upon them. One can create hallucination for himself only by insisting that what he has created was otherwise created, in short, refusing to accept responsibility for his own created illusions. Electronics. Lower and cruder manifestations of the same order of actuality as thought. Terminals. In facsimiles, ridges, and electric motors, terminals operate and current flows only when they are fixed in time and space. Alternating current becomes possible only because of an overlooked item, the base of the motor, which is fixed in time and space and which keeps the terminals apart by fixing them in time and space. The human soul. The preclear. Mysticism. Many right ideas, but the wrong way to go about it. Freedom. Ability to create and position energy or matter in time and space. Slavery. being positioned in another's time and space. The human body, a carbon-oxygen engine built of complex electronic ridges around the genetic entity which animates it. The human mind, the thetan plus the standard memory banks. Stimulus response, the environment of the thetan activating ridges to make them activate the body. The reactive mind, the ridge automatic response system. The somatic mind, the genetic entity plus the brain system of the body. Scientology, the science of knowing how to know. Knowing how to know, being the thetan clear of the body and its ridges and able to handle illusion, matter, energy, space, and time. Theta clear, a being who is reasonably stable outside the body and does not come back into the body simply because the body is hurt. No other condition is necessary. Cleared theta clear, a thetan who is completely rehabilitated and can do everything a thetan should do, such as move mest and control others from a distance, or create his own universe. A theta exterior, a thetan who is clear of his body and knows it, but is not yet stable outside. Standard operating procedure. This procedure is done in steps. The auditor, with every pre-clear, makes no other judgment than to begin with step 1, and failing to accomplish that immediately, to go to step 2. If he fails to accomplish this immediately, he goes to step 3, and so on. When he is able to accomplish a step, he labels the case as that step number, i.e., A3. He then begins working with that step. After a few hours' work, he again starts at the top with the pre-clear with step 1 and progresses on through. Eventually, the pre-clear becomes a step 1. Step 1. Positive exteriorization. Ask the pre-clear to be 3 feet back of your head. If he does, ask him to go back further, then up, then down, practicing placement in space and time. Then one asks him to see if there are any items in the body he would like to repair, and proceeds to let the pre-clear repair them according to the pre-clear's own ideas of how he should do it. Then educate the pre-clear by asking him to create and destroy his own illusions, into finally getting a certainty of illusion, and from this, a certainty of perceiving the real universe with all perceptics. Note, the realist universe is, of course, one's own illusory universe, and should be completely rehabilitated before one attempts to perceive or handle or worry about the messed universe. Rehabilitated sonic, visio, etc. of the messed universe are very clear and very certain. Clear perception in early stages is not a test of being outside. The only test is whether the pre-clear knows he is outside. Change postulates, postulate processing, and rising scale processing. Failing the first line of this step, go to step 2. Step 2. By orientation. Ask the pre-clear, still inside, to locate the inside of his forehead. Ask him to put a pressor beam against it and push himself out the back of his head. Supplement this by asking him to reach out through the back of his head and grab the wall with a pulling beam and pull himself out. Ask him to steady himself outside, and then, by means of beams, to raise and lower himself while outside and to move to various parts of the room while still outside. Use creative processing. By orientation as a thetan, placing himself as a thetan in time and space, he becomes sure of his whereabouts. Have him find and cast off old lines which have their terminals fixed to him. Have him find these lines wherever they are and attach them to radiators and water taps and get the energy to drain out of them. The two will ordinarily have enough lines to cause him to snap back in the head when he releases beams. Failing this, go to step 3. Step 3. Space processing. In that the messed universe has forced upon the thetan its spatial dimensions and directions, the thetan is likely to become a point which is being subjected to all the counter-efforts and emotions of his environment, for his entire concept of space is being determined by the messed universe. Have the thetan, still inside, find his feet in the opposite direction from where the messed body is located by the messed universe. Have him turn the feet around. Have him create differences in his body and reverse various limbs and positions according to his viewpoint, each one in disagreement with the messed universe, particularly as appertains to gravity and other influences. This sets up an ability to disagree with the meshed universe in terms of space. Have him locate his eyes in the back of his head, on the soles of his feet, and in other places. Have him assume other bodies, each time changing them slightly and putting them away. Then have him gather himself into his normal meshed universe spatial area and go to Step 1. Step 4. Ridge running. Ask the pre-clear to give himself a command to walk. Let him locate the white flow line which results inside his head. When this line goes dark, have him locate the tiny ridge inside the skull that stopped it. Have him run the flow from this barrier. These barriers, they are tiny ridges, and each has a thought with it such as can't walk or too bored to walk, back toward the spot where he told himself to walk. It will run white for a moment and then go black. Then have him give himself the command to walk again and watch this flow line. It may run through 2 or 3 tiny barriers and then stop. Again, have him run the objection to walking. Have him watch the objection flow until it goes black. Then have him give himself the command to walk again, and so on and so on. He will wind up at some outside point. Now have him give himself the command listen, and have him run this and its backflows on black and white until he is exterior on the subject of listen. Then use the command talk similarly. Then the command nod. Then the command move, etc. Give look last, for it may blind his perception of black and white. He may each time get out to a distance in another quarter. If he can do all this, start with Step 1 again. Failing this step, failing to see black and white energy manifestations, go to Step 5. Step 5. Black and white control processing. Give the pre-clear a complete E-meter assessment using the principles of what he would create or destroy or would not create or would not destroy. See pre-clear assessments, creation and destruction. Use this data to make mock-ups. Then have the pre-clear create and perceive black spots and then white spots, black crosses and white crosses, and move these here and there through the room or through his own space. Turn them on and off, interchanging them. Put them in yesterday. Put them in tomorrow. Make them get larger, make them get smaller, each time doing as much as the pre-clear can do. Each time one asks him to perceive one of his own created illusions in terms of black and white spots or crosses, one attempts to coax him into successful control of it. Audit very persuasively and lightly. This pre-clear ordinarily is frightened of blackness because it either can contain dangerous things or contains nothing, and he cannot differentiate which. Thus, he cannot control blackness, and in being unable to control blackness, flounders in it. He also has a more basic computation that blackness is the only safe thing in which to hide, and therefore blackness is a thing to have. Further, blackness takes things for him. This pre-clear may be afraid of the police, may believe himself to have a hideous body, theta-wise, and has many other reasons why he cannot exteriorize. Drills on creating and perceiving black and white should be continued until he can handle each easily. The trouble with this pre-clear, and pre-clears lower than this, is that they have agreed too heavily with the meshed universe and must be very cautious in confronting it, since in that direction they conceive to lie a much more complete defeat even than that from which they are now suffering. Audit him also very heavily on creative processing, self-analysis in Scientology. Then go through steps again. If the pre-clear is immediately perceived to have little or no reality on any incident, go to Step 6. Step 6. ARC straight wire. Drill, by direct questioning, unlocks until the pre-clear can remember something really real to him, something which he really loved, something with which he was in communication. Then drill him on creating illusions until he is certain he has created one which really isn't real, which he is certain he put the emotion and perception into. See self-analysis in Scientology with attention to end-of-session processing. Then go through steps again. Failing Step 6, after a quick test, go to Step 7. Step 7. Present time body orientation. Have pre-clear locate a part of his body and recognize it as such. Have him locate furniture, fixtures, auditor in room. Have him locate the town and country he is in. Get him to find something in present time which is really real to him, with which he can communicate. Work on this until he can do this. Then go to Step 6. Then go to Step 1. Pre-Clear Assessments. Chapter 28. Be, Do, Have, and Space, Energy, Time Triangle. The physicist has long been on a carousel with regard to the component parts of the material universe. He has had to define time in terms of space and energy, space in terms of time and energy in terms of time and space, and matter as a combination of all three. When three factors exist at such an altitude in a science, there can be no further clarification unless the material can be related to experience of an equal magnitude. The current definitions in Scientology have this liability. If self-determinism is the location of matter and energy in time and space, and the creation, change, and destruction of time and space, then there is no comparable data by which to evaluate this level. The physicist has found the interrelationship time, space, and energy to be invaluable and has indeed produced a civilization from this interrelationship. Just as with our definition of self-determinism, it is possible to de-aberrate an individual and increase his potentialities in a way never before suspected possible, and with a speed which exceeds all past estimations, even in the science of Scientology. Because we are now working from a higher understanding than time, space, and energy, it is possible to compare these to experience in such a way as to broaden their use and modify their force or increase it. Control of time, space, and energy comes now well within our capabilities. Space, time, and energy in experience become be, have, and do, the component parts of experience itself. Space equals be. Space could be said to be. One can be in a space without change and without time, and one can also be without action. Time equals have. The essence of time is apparently possession, have. When possession ceases, the record of time ceases. Without possession, change cannot be observed. In the presence of possession, change can be observed. Thus it is deduced that time and possession are interdependent. The past could be subdivided into had, did not have, and got, should have gotten, did not get, and gave, should have given, did not give. The present could be subdivided into have, should have, do not have, and giving, should be giving, not giving, and receiving, should be receiving, not receiving. The future is subdivided into will have, should have, will not have, and getting, will be getting, will not be getting, and will receive, will not receive. In each of the above, past, present, and future, the word would apply for any individual or any part of the dynamics to all the other dynamics. The way one knows there was a past is by knowing the conditions of the past. The most revelatory of these is the facsimile which was taken in the past. However, without any possession in the present stemming forward from the past becomes unimportant, or because possession ceased, the past is obliterated. The single matter of the body of a past life not being in the present life invalidates the existence of the past life to the individual who then does not or does not care to remember it. Yet the facsimiles can nevertheless be effective upon him. Similarly, the individual does not conceive, to any extent, time past the death of his body, since he will have no body. Energy equals do. Energy, whether in the field of thought, emotion, or effort, can be summed into do. It requires beingness and havingness in order to achieve doingness. Here we have the static of space acting against the kinetic of possession to produce action in the field of thought, emotion, or effort, the various categories of doingness. Should one care to test this as a process on a pre-clear, he will find that the missing portions of the pre-clear's past have to do with loss of something. Loss itself is the single most aberrative factor in living. It has long been known in this science that the release of a grief charge was an important single improvement in the pre-clear. Grief is entirely and only concerned with loss or threatened loss. Pain itself can be defined in terms of loss. For pain is the threat which tells one that loss of mobility or a portion of the body or the environment is imminent. Man has pain so thoroughly identified with loss that in some languages the words are synonymous. Loss is always identified with have. for if one doesn't have, one cannot lose. The Hindu sought to depart into his nirvana by refusing to have anything to do with having. He sought thus to promote himself into being. He saw that as long as he retained a grasp on a body in any degree, he was having and thus was pressed into doing. Having and being are often identified to the degree that many people attempt exclusively to be only by having. The capitalist judges his own beingness solely by the degree of possession, not even vaguely by the degree of action he is able to execute. Possessions absorb and enforce time. Only without possessions would one be able to regulate time at will. This is a singular attribute of the cleared theta clear, and to him possession of mest is extremely unimportant. One can make up for a lack of having by doing, and by doing accomplishes having and thus regulates time. Having enhances either being or doing, as is sometimes severely recognized by one who would like to take a vacation or a trip to foreign lands. Doing can enhance either being or having. A balanced doing slants in both directions, but if one does without having, his being increases, as is well known by anyone who insists on doing favors without recompense and without gain. There is an optimum speed of doing. If one travels less than that speed, he has little being and having. This is applicable especially to the mest universe. If one travels greater than that speed, he has to abandon both being and having. The case of the racing driver is in point. He must assume a contempt for being and having in order to achieve the speeds he does. When change is too rapid, both beingness and havingness suffer. When change is too slow, both beingness and havingness suffer. For change is essentially the redirection of energy. In the assessment of a pre-clear, one can easily trace, by use of the triangle be, have, and do, and by placing this over a second triangle with space at the point of be, time at the point of have, and energy at the point of do, where the pre-clear is overbalanced and why the pre-clear cannot handle time, or why life is complicated with too much havingness and has reduced his beingness to naught, or why he is trying to occupy too much space without being able to fill it. In the mest universe, as well as in a constructed universe, these three factors should be balanced for orderly progress. Chapter 29. Creation and Destruction. The cycle of a universe could be said to be the cycle of creation, growth, conservation, decay, and destruction. This is the cycle of an entire universe or any part of that universe. It is also the cycle of life forms. This would compare to the three actions of energy, which are start, change, and stop, where creation is start, growth is enforced change, conservation and decay are inhibited change, and destruction is stop. The two extremes of the cycle, creation and destruction, or in the terms of motion, start and stop, are interdependent and are consecutive. There could be no creation without destruction. As one must eradicate the tenement before building the apartment house, so in the material universe must destruction and creation be intermingled. A good action could be said to be one which accomplished the maximal construction with minimal destruction. A bad action could be said to be one which accomplished the minimal construction with maximal destruction. That which is started and cannot be stopped, and that which is stopped without being permitted to run a course are alike actions bordering upon the psychotic. Unreasonableness itself is defined by persistence in one or the other of these courses of starting something which cannot be stopped, as in the case of an A-bomb, or of stopping something before it has reached a beneficial stage. Unlimited creation without any destruction would be insane. Unlimited destruction without any creation would be similarly insane. In actuality, insanity can be grouped and classified, detected and remedied by a study of creation and destruction. An individual will not be responsible for that on which he will not use force. The definition of responsibility is entirely within this boundary. That person will not be responsible in that sphere where he cannot tolerate force, and if one discovers in an individual where he will not use force, he will find where that individual will also refuse to be responsible. An assessment of a case can be done by use of the accompanying graph. In the audiobook directory, we see here creation with an arrow pointing straight downward, and find there the word insane. and under this we list the dynamics. Wherever along any of these dynamics the individual cannot conceive himself to be able to create, on that level he will be found aberrated to the degree that he does not believe himself able to create. This might be thought to introduce an imponderable, but such is not the case. For the individual is most aberrated on the first dynamic, and rightly or wrongly conceives that he could not create himself. This goes to the extent in Homo sapiens of believing that one cannot create a body, and rightly or wrongly, one is then most aberrated on the subject of his body. Potentially, because of the character of theta itself, an individual in an absolute and possibly unattainable state should be able to create a universe. Certainly it is true that every man is his own universe and possesses within himself all the capabilities of a universe. To the extreme right of the graph, we have the word destruction and an arrow pointing downward toward insane. And beneath this, the list of the dynamics. That individual who can only destroy along any of these dynamics and cannot or will not create could be said to be aberrated on that dynamic. He is aberrated to the degree that he would destroy that dynamic. Looking again at the column of creation, one finds the individual aberrated anywhere along the dynamics in that column where the individual will only create and will not destroy. In the destruction column, one finds the individual aberrated on any dynamic in that column where he will only destroy. In the middle ground of the graph, we find that a balance of creation and destruction is sane. And in the dynamics below it, we find the individual sane wherever he will create and destroy. Use of this graph and these principles enable the auditor to assess hitherto hidden compulsions and obsessions on the part of the pre-clear. This is an auditing graph. If one looks at it in another way than auditing, he finds there laid out what has occasionally been posed as a philosophy of existence. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his book Thus Spake Zarathustra, presents as a desirable code of conduct unlimited willingness to destroy. Philosophically, the code has little or no workability. In order to survive in any universe, conduct must be regulated by a sense of ethics. Ethics are possible on a reasonable level only when the individual is high on the tone scale. In the absence of such height, ethics are supplanted by morals, which can be defined as an arbitrary code of conduct not necessarily related to reason. Should one attempt to regulate his conduct on the basis of unlimited creation or destruction, he would find it necessary to act entirely without judgment to put his philosophy into effect. It is noteworthy that the late Nazi regime can serve as a clinical test of the workability of a scheme of things wherein unlimited creation and destruction are held as an ideal. I heard a rumor lately that Adolf Hitler was dead. Book 2, 1953. Part 1. The Factors. Chapter 1. The Factors. Summation of the considerations and examinations of the human spirit and the material universe completed between 1923 and 1953 A.D. 1. Before the beginning was a cause, and the entire purpose of the cause was the creation of effect. 2. In the beginning and forever is the decision, and the decision is to be. 3. The first action of beingness is to assume a viewpoint. 4. The second action of beingness is to extend from the viewpoint points to view, which are dimension points. 5. Thus there is space created, for the definition of space is viewpoint of dimension, and the purpose of a dimension point is space and a point to view. 6. The action of a dimension point is reaching and withdrawing. 7. And from the viewpoint to the dimension points there are connection and interchange. Thus new dimension points are made, thus there is communication. 8. And thus there is light. 9. And thus there is energy. 10. And thus there is life. 11. But there are other viewpoints, and these viewpoints outthrust points to view. And there comes about an interchange amongst viewpoints, but the interchange is never otherwise than in terms of exchanging dimension points. 12. The dimension point can be moved by the viewpoint, for the viewpoint, in addition to creative ability and consideration, possesses volition and potential independence of action, and the viewpoint, viewing dimension points, can change in relation to its own or other dimension points or viewpoints, and thus comes about all the fundamentals there are to motion. 13. The dimension points are each and every one, whether large or small, solid, and they are solid solely because the viewpoints say they are solid. 14. Many dimension points combine into larger gases, fluids, or solids. Thus, there is matter. But the most valued point is admiration, and admiration is so strong its absence alone permits persistence. 15. The dimension point can be different from other dimension points, and thus can possess an individual quality. And many dimension points can possess a similar quality, and others can possess a similar quality unto themselves. Thus comes about the quality of classes of matter. 16. The viewpoint can combine dimension points into forms, and the forms can be simple or complex, and can be at different distances from the viewpoint, and so there can be combinations of form. And the forms are capable of motion, and the viewpoints are capable of motion, and so there can be motion of forms. 17. And the opinion of the viewpoint regulates the consideration of the forms, their stillness or their motion, and these considerations consist of assignment of beauty or ugliness to the forms, and these considerations alone are art. 18. It is the opinions of the viewpoints that some of these forms should endure. Thus there is survival. 19. And the viewpoint can never perish, but the form can perish. 20. And the many viewpoints, interacting, become dependent upon one another's forms, and do not choose to distinguish completely the ownership of dimension points, and so comes about a dependency upon the dimension points and upon the other viewpoints. 21. From this comes a consistency of viewpoint of the interaction of dimension points, and this, regulated, is time. 22. And there are universes. 23. The universes, then, are three in number: the universe created by one viewpoint, the universe created by every other viewpoint, the universe created by the mutual action of viewpoints which is agreed to be upheld, the physical universe. 24. And the viewpoints are never seen, and the viewpoints consider more and more that the dimension points are valuable. And the viewpoints try to become the anchor points, and forget that they can create more points and space and forms. Thus comes about scarcity. And the dimension points can perish, and so the viewpoints assume that they too can perish. 25. Thus comes about death. 26. The manifestations of pleasure and pain, of thought, emotion, and effort, of thinking, of sensation, of affinity, reality, communication, of behavior and being, are thus derived, and the riddles of our universe are apparently contained and answered herein. 27. There is beingness, but man believes there is only becomingness. 28. The resolution of any problem posed hereby is the establishment of viewpoints and dimension points, the betterment of condition and concourse amongst dimension points, and thereby viewpoints, and the remedy of abundance or scarcity in all things, pleasant or ugly, by the rehabilitation of the ability of the viewpoint to assume points of view and create and uncreate, neglect, start, change, and stop dimension points of any kind at the determinism of the viewpoint. Certainty in all three universes must be regained, for certainty, not data, is knowledge. 29. In the opinion of the viewpoint, any beingness, any thing, is better than no thing, any effect is better than no effect, any universe better than no universe, any particle better than no particle, but the particle of admiration is best of all. 30. And above these things there might be speculation only, and below these things there is the playing of the game. But these things which are written here man can experience and know. And some may care to teach these things, and some may care to use them to assist those in distress, and some may desire to employ them to make individuals and organizations more able, and so could give to earth a culture of which earth could be proud. Humbly tendered as a gift to man by L. Ron Hubbard, April 23, 1953. Chapter 2. Viewpoints and dimension points. Space. The workable definition of space is viewpoint of dimension. There is no space without viewpoint. There is no space without points to view. This definition of space supplies a very great lack in the field of physics, which defines space simply as that thing in which energy acts. Physics has defined space as change of motion or in terms of time and energy. Time has been defined in terms of space and energy. Energy has been defined in terms of space and time only. These definitions, thus interdependent, made a circle out of which there was no exit unless one had a better definition for one of those items, time, space, or energy. In such a way was the science of physics limited. Space is the viewpoint of dimension. The position of the viewpoint can change. The position of the dimension points can change. A dimension point is any point in a space or at the boundaries of space. As a specialized case, those points which demark the outermost boundaries of the space or its corners are called, in Scientology, anchor points. An anchor point is a specialized kind of dimension point. Any energy has as its basic particle a dimension point. The dimension point can be of different kinds and substances. It can combine in various ways. It can take on forms, become objects. It can flow as energy. A particle of admiration or a particle of force are alike dimension points. Dimension points, by shifting, can give the viewpoint the illusion of motion. The viewpoint, by shifting, can give the dimension points the illusion of motion. Motion is the manifestation of change of viewpoint of dimension points. Viewpoints are not visible, but viewpoints can have dimension points which are themselves visible. The basic hidden influence is, then, a viewpoint. A material of the universe cannot exist in any universe without something in which to exist. The something in which it exists is space, and this is made by the attitude of a viewpoint which demarks an area with anchor points. Rather than existing on theory, in common with other principles of Scientology, this manifestation of created space can be experienced by an individual who discovers that space can be made coincidentally with any other space. Space, then, is not an arbitrary and absolute, but is creatable or uncreatable by a viewpoint. Any being is a viewpoint. He is as much a being as he is able to assume viewpoints. Thus, in any society, we would inevitably have a statement of the infinity of viewpoint, such as, God is everywhere. Beings instinctively assign the most beingness to that thing which would be everywhere. And when man desires to assign an unlimited power or command to anything, he says that it is everywhere. Beingness. In this universe, in order to achieve a state of beingness, it is necessary to have a viewpoint from which dimension points can be created or controlled. One has as much viewpoint as he has space in which to view, in relationship to other viewpoints having space in which to view. Thus, one has a condition of relative beingness. Energy. The basic unit of energy is the dimension point. A specialized kind of dimension point is the anchor point which demarks space. But this is again the basic unit of energy. Dimension points are created, controlled, or uncreated by the thetan. Matter. In order to have space, it is necessary to have a viewpoint, and the potential in the viewpoint of creating anchor points. Thus, in order to view matter, much less control or create it, it is necessary to have a viewpoint. Chapter 3. Universes. A universe is defined as a whole system of created things. There could be and are many universes, and there could be many kinds of universes. We are, for our purposes here, interested in two particular universes. The first of these is the messed universe, that agreed-upon reality of matter, energy, space, and time, which we use as anchor points and through which we communicate. The other is our personal universe, which is no less a matter of energy and space. These two universes are entirely distinct, and it could be said that the principal confusion and aberration of the individual stems from his having confused one for the other. Where these two universes have crossed in the mind of the individual, we find a confusion of control and ownership, for the reason that the two universes do not behave alike. Whereas each one of these universes was apparently founded on the same modus operandi as any other universe, which is to say the creation of space by putting out anchor points, the formation of forms by combinations of dimension points, the meshed universe and one's own universe do not behave similarly for him. One's own universe is amenable to instantaneous creation and destruction by himself and without argument. He can create space and bring it into a permanent status. He can create and combine forms in that space and cause those forms to go into motion. And he can make that motion continuously automatic, or he can regulate it sporadically, or he can regulate it totally and all by postulate. One's envisionment of one's own universe is intensely clear. The reality of one's own universe is sharper and brighter, if anything, than his reality on the meshed universe. We call one's attitude toward his own universe actuality, and his attitude toward the meshed universe, since it is based upon agreement, reality. Unless an individual is at a very high operating level, he conceives it necessary to use physical force and to apply meshed universe forces to meshed universe forces in order to get action, motion, and new forms. His activity in the meshed universe is an activity of handling energy, and his ability to exist in the meshed universe is conditional upon his ability to use force. The meshed universe is essentially a force universe, a fact which is, incidentally, antipathetic to most Thetans. One's ability to handle the meshed universe is conditional upon his not abdicating from his right to use force, right to give orders, his right to punish, his right to administer personal justice, and so forth. We are presented in the meshed universe with a crude and brutal scene wherein gigantic forces are in pressure against gigantic forces, and where the end of all seems but destruction. Paradoxically, in the meshed universe, destruction of form only is possible, since by the law of the conservation of energy, the destruction of actual material objects is impossible, only conversion being attainable. In the meshed universe, ethics seem to be a liability. Honesty is all but impossible, save when armed with force of vast magnitude. Only the strong can afford to be ethical, and yet the use of strength begets but the use of strength. In the meshed universe, we are confronted with paradoxes upon paradoxes where behavior is concerned. For behavior in the meshed universe is regulated by stimulus response and not by analytical thought or reason. The meshed universe demands of us complete and utter obedience and agreement on the penalty of extermination. Yet when one has agreed entirely with the meshed universe, he finds himself unable to perceive it with clarity. In one's own universe, on the other hand, honesty, ethics, happiness, good behavior, justice all become possible. It is one of the operations of the meshed universe that it is a jealous universe, and those who are thoroughly imbued with the principles of the meshed universe have, even at their best efforts, the goal of eradicating one's own universe. A control operation begins early in the life of almost every man, whereby his imagination is condemned. His own universe is not imaginary, but it may be said to be so. And if his imagination is condemned, then he loses his ability to garnish the hardness and brutality of the meshed universe with hopes and dreams. When he loses this, he becomes a slave of the meshed universe, and as a slave, he perishes. His road to immortality lies then in another direction than in the complete subservient agreement with the meshed universe and the handling and conversion of its forces. This is a matter which has been subjected continuously to test, and it is intensely surprising to people to discover that the rehabilitation of their creative ability, their own space, their own images, rehabilitates as well their ability to confront the meshed universe with a strong and ethical face. Creative processing, especially where it divorces all thought from thought of the meshed universe and follows out along a line of the rehabilitation of one's own universe without attention to the meshed universe, is one level of processing which produces magnificent results and which is a standby in any case, no matter how difficult. On the other hand, the rehabilitation of the meshed universe itself, in the concept of the individual, accomplishes a very great deal in processing, and could be said to compare with the rehabilitation of one's own universe. But the rehabilitation of one's ability to perceive the meshed universe is dependent upon his ability to perceive present time and the rehabilitation of that ability. Dwelling with the meshed universe past or its future is fruitless. Thinking about the meshed universe, attempting to predict the meshed universe, planning to reorganize and handle the meshed universe all defeat one's ability to handle the meshed universe. When he simply begins to perceive the meshed universe in present time and to examine that which he sees with the idea that he can be what he sees, he loses all fear of the meshed universe. There is a differentiation process in one's own universe, a differentiation process exclusively for the meshed universe, and a differentiation process which pulls apart one's own universe and the meshed universe. The first of these processes simply goes about reconstructing one's own universe with no attention to the meshed universe. The second causes the individual to contact the meshed universe present time and to observe that present time continuously. The third differentiates between the meshed universe and one's own universe and consists of mocking up one's own universe duplicate of every meshed universe object he can perceive and then actually comparing these one against the other. This process is called duplicating. Creating space and mocking up items in it is the rehabilitation of one's own universe and is a primary process. Differentiating between two similar objects in the meshed universe, such as two books, two chairs, two spaces, with one's meshed eyesight, accomplishes much in being able to face and handle the meshed universe. The mocking up of meshed universe duplicates, which is to say, constructing a universe parallel to the meshed universe, is the mechanism by which facsimiles are made, and this process brings under control the mechanisms which make facsimiles. The original definition of Scientology 8/8008 was the attainment of infinity, 8, by the reduction of the apparent infinity, 8, and power of the meshed universe to a 0, 0, for himself, and the increase of the apparent 0, 0 of one's own universe to an infinity, 8, for oneself. This is an ideal and theoretical process. It is not necessarily attainable in actuality or reality, but it very well may be. It can be seen that infinity stood upright makes the number 8. Thus, Scientology 8/8008 is not just another number, but serves to fix into the mind of the individual a route by which he can rehabilitate himself, his abilities, his ethics, and his goals. Chapter 4. Behavior of Universes. It could be said, then, that the difference between the microcosm, one's own universe, and the macrocosm, the meshed universe, is the difference between commanding it and agreeing about it. One's own universe is what he would construct for a universe without the opposition or the confusion of other viewpoints. The meshed universe is that upon which one agrees in order to continue in association with other viewpoints. This may very well be the sole difference between these two universes. This is exemplified by one's behavior attitude in his own universe as compared with his behavior attitude in the meshed universe. In one's own universe, the individual expansively plans and devises, once he is fairly confident of it, along the lines of beauty and happiness. In the meshed universe, even when one has been rehabilitated to some degree, one's attitude still must consist of a certain amount of watchfulness and cooperation. One's universe is an unthwarted sway. The meshed universe is a compromise. When one has compromised too long and too often, when he has been betrayed and ridiculed and is no longer able to create what he believes to be desirable, he descends down to lower levels, and in those levels he is still more compelled to face the meshed universe, and as such loses much more of his ability to handle the meshed universe. When an individual's ability to create his own universe is rehabilitated, it will be found, strangely enough, that his ability to handle the meshed universe has been rehabilitated. In fact, this is the most secure route as represented in 8/8008 as a road. By actual experiment, it can be demonstrated that one's ability to mock up a universe of his own and the resulting improvement of his perceptions to that universe bring about an ability to perceive the meshed universe. Indeed, it might be inferred as something like a proof that the meshed universe in itself is an illusion based upon agreement, in view of the fact that the rehabilitation of the ability to view illusion rehabilitates the ability to view the meshed universe. Chapter 5. Terminals. At every turn in the examination of the meshed universe, we discover that it is a two-terminal universe. In the manufacture of electricity, it is necessary to have two terminals. In order to have an opinion evaluated, it is necessary to have an opinion against which the first can be evaluated. A datum can be understood in the meshed universe only when it is compared to a datum of comparable magnitude. This is two terminals operating in terms of thought. Two meshed universe terminals which are similar, placed side by side, will discharge to some degree against each other. This is observable in gravity as well as in electricity. A primary difference between the meshed universe and one's own universe is that one's own universe is not necessarily a two-terminal universe. One can mock up in one's own universe two terminals which will discharge against each other. But one can also, at will, mock up two terminals which are identical, which will not discharge against each other. There are a number of processes which can include double terminals. One terminal made to face another terminal in terms of mock-up can be discharged one against the other in such a way as to relieve aberration connected with things similar to the terminal thus mocked up. However, these two terminals do not furnish a double terminal of a communication line. A communication line is more important than a communication point. Thus, if one wished to discharge anything, he would desire to discharge the communication line. The meshed universe is intensely dependent upon communication lines rather than communication terminals. One takes two pairs of such terminals then, and standing them in relationship to each other, discovers that he now has four terminals. But these four terminals furnish only two lines. These two lines will discharge one against the other. This, as a limited process, should not be continued very long. It is of greatest interest in rendering assistance after an accident where it is only necessary to mock up the accident twice, or indeed, to mock up something similar to an injured limb, to have the pain and discomfort and aberration discharged. Should one burn one's finger, it is necessary only to mock up his finger twice side by side, and then twice again, making four mock-ups with two communication lines to have the pain in the finger subside. The mock-ups discharge at the same time as one's injured finger re-experiences the incident. This manifestation is the manifestation of the meshed universe. It is not a manifestation of one's own universe, and if practiced over a long period of time, is essentially in agreement with the meshed universe, a thing which should be avoided. Thus, it is a limited process. A terminal is in essence any point of no form, or any form or dimension from which energy can flow or by which energy can be received. A viewpoint, then, is a sort of terminal. But a terminal must have a particle in order to do automatic interchanges. And one finds that a viewpoint can be affected by the meshed universe only when the viewpoint has identified itself with some meshed universe article, such as a body. The rehabilitation of the viewpoint's ability to be or not be at will is essential in order that a viewpoint be self-determined about what is affecting him and what is not affecting him. This depends then, of course, upon what a viewpoint identifies himself with, and depends upon the ability of the viewpoint to unidentify himself rapidly. Terminals are anywhere in the meshed universe and can be manufactured, of course, in one's own universe. The difference is that any bit of solid, even on the level of an electron, in the meshed universe is, willy-nilly, a terminal. It is affected in certain ways, whether it likes it or not. Any particle in any object or any flow of energy is, in itself, a terminal. A terminal can be affected by any other terminal, or can affect, to some degree, other terminals. This cross-relationship of terminals in the meshed universe is meshed universe communication. In one's own universe, a flow is not necessary for the production of energy or potentials. It is one of the sources of aberration that the scarcity of things in the meshed universe causes one to own only one of things. This is aberrative, since one can gather into itself charges which are not discharged, since there is nothing immediately similar to it. If one owned two of everything he had, and if these two things were nearly identical, he would find that his worry and concern about these objects was greatly decreased. A child, for instance, should have two dolls alike, not simply one doll. The reason for this is that two terminals will discharge one against the other. The Thetan is capable of mocking himself up to be exactly like everything he sees. As a matter of fact, whatever a Thetan can see, he can be. Thus, the Thetan makes himself into a terminal for every terminal he sees whenever there is an absence of a duplicate. Thus, the Thetan is in the danger of having everything in the meshed universe discharging against him the moment he alters his relationship to the meshed universe. This fixes him in the belief that he cannot alter his relationship to the meshed universe. Actually, He is rather rapidly disabused of this conception by processing. It is rather interesting to double terminal, in mock-up form, the childhood toys of an individual. He will find there is an enormous amount of charge simply in the fact that these toys were made out of mast. The favorite doll has a gravitic influence upon him. Completely aside from the terminals one finds in an electric motor, and which produce so much current by reason of being separated by the base of the motor, the subject of terminals goes into behavior and explains, in a great measure, behavior on a stimulus-response basis in the meshed universe. Indeed, it could be said that the meshed universe came into being by one terminal demanding attention from another terminal, and these two terminals thereafter facing each other, continuing a discharge one to the other. With very aberrated people, one cannot long discuss things with them without getting the manifestation of terminals, for the very aberrated people fix on a terminal easily. It could be said that the meshed universe is the average of agreement amongst viewpoints, and that the laws of the meshed universe, no matter how physical, are the result of this agreement. And indeed, this definition suffices for those conditions which are supposed to be reality. The meshed universe is very real, but any hypnotist can instruct a hypnotized subject into the construction of a universe which has tactile, sight, sound, and any other manifestation possessed by the meshed universe. And who is to say, then, that the hypnotized subject is not perceiving a universe? For one's own perception of the meshed universe consists of his placing an object in proximity to or against another object, and both of these objects are found to be objects of the meshed universe. This is overlooked by individuals when they, for instance, strike a desk with their fist. It is the favorite declaration of the materialist, that individual who is in a frantic state of insistence upon the existence of the meshed universe, that this is real. The effects he is creating are being created by a hand that is made out of mest on an object which is mest. The individual has overlooked the fact that the hand with which he is doing the pounding is itself mest, and that his knowledge of that hand is actually no more than his perception of it. This is a problem in two terminals. Chapter 6. Logic. Logic is a gradient scale of association of facts of greater or lesser similarity made to resolve some problem of the past, present, or future, but mainly to resolve and predict the future. Logic is the combination of factors into an answer. The mission of the analytical mind, when it thinks, is to observe and predict by the observation of results. Easily, the best way to do this is to be the objects one is observing. Thus one can know their condition completely. However, if one is not sufficiently up the scale to be these objects, it is necessary to assume what they are. This assumption of what they are, the postulating of a symbol to represent the objects, and the combination of these symbols when evaluated against past experience or known law, bring about logic. The genesis of logic may be said to be an interchange of two viewpoints, via other dimension points, by which one of the viewpoints holds the attention, one of the most valuable commodities in the universe, of the other viewpoint by being logical about why that viewpoint should continue to look. The basis of logic is, it is bad over there, or there is a hidden influence, which you cannot estimate, but which we will try to estimate. Therefore, you should continue to look toward me. At its best, logic is rationalization, for all logic is based upon the somewhat idiotic circumstance that a being that is immortal is trying to survive. Survival is a condition susceptible to non-survival. If one is surviving, one is at the same moment admitting that one can cease to survive. Otherwise, one would never strive to survive. An immortal being striving to survive presents immediately a paradox. An immortal being must be persuaded that he cannot survive, or that he is not and might become naught, before he would pay any attention to logic. By logic, he can then estimate the future. Probably the only reason he would want to estimate the meshed universe, aside from amusement, is to keep alive in it or to maintain something in a state of life in it. Logic and survival are intimate, but it must be remembered that if one is worried about his own survival and is striving for his own survival, he is striving for the survival of an immortal being. Bodies are transient, but bodies are an illusion. One could bring himself up the tone scale to a point where he could create an imperishable body with ease. It is interesting that those people who are the most logical are those people who, in processing, have to know before they are. When they are sent somewhere, they want to know what is there before they get there. There would be no point in going there if they knew and if everyone knew what was there before they went there. Yet they will attempt to predict what is going to happen there and what is there by knowing. This knowingness is in terms of data and should not be confused with knowingness in terms of actual beingness. Logic is the use of data to produce knowingness. As such, it is very junior to knowing something by being it. If you were to double terminal an individual who is customarily very logical, his body facing his body in terms of mock-up, and each of the terminals being very logical, a surprising violence of interchange would take place. This is because logic is mainly aberration. The work which lies before you is a discussion of beingness and is the track of agreement which became evidently the messed universe. Therefore, this work appears to be logical, but it also appears to be the central thread of logic. Apparently, these conclusions were reached by logic. They were not. They were reached by observation and by induction. That when tested they proved themselves in terms of behavior demonstrates not that they are logical, but that they are at least to a large extent a discussion of beingness. Scientific logic and mathematical logic have the frailty of trying to find out what is there before one goes there. One cannot ever be if he has to know a datum about the beingness first. If one is afraid to be, one will become, of course, logical. This is no effort to be abusive upon the subject of logic or mathematics. It is only necessary at this point to indicate a certain difference between what lies before you and a logical arrangement of assumption. Chapter 7. Assists. As noted earlier under terminals, an assist can be rendered by mocking up the injured part or the scene of injury as two terminals and holding or recreating these mock-ups until the injury abates. While doing this, it will be noted particularly that the mock-ups are at first uncontrollable in most cases and then become much more easily controlled. The uncontrollable factor of the mock-ups is answered by this. Whenever a pair of mock-ups or a single mock-up misbehaves, which is to say acts without the specific command of the person getting the mock-up, the person doing the mock-up should simply abandon the pair or single mock-up and put into its place again one which is doing what he wants it to do. In other words, a disobedient mock-up or pair of mock-ups is either put away or moved to the right or left or forced into control, and in its place the individual simply puts a mock-up which is obedient to his control. An auditor should be careful on this point, for an individual getting mock-ups will strain and worry and eventually discover, he thinks, that it is impossible for him to control his mock-ups. Using effort to control one's mock-ups is of little avail. One simply creates them. Where mock-ups are absent, one will appear if the individual will simply keep putting the thought forward that it will appear. If he puts forward the thought often enough and long enough, he will get such a mock-up. Where he can get only one of a pair of mock-ups, if he will keep putting the second one in, it will eventually appear. What one is facing in double terminaling here is so much charge on a single subject that the charge dissipates the mock-up before the mock-up can be adequately perceived. No matter how briefly, when an individual has said a mock-up will be there, a mock-up has appeared. That it has disappeared promptly does not mean that he cannot put up a second mock-up there. Particular attention should be given to this in assists because an assist is essentially an injured member or a scene which contains pain. In double terminaling assists, it will be found that the pre-clear becomes ill or in pain in spite of how innocent he may feel it is to hold two terminals out in front of him. The remedy for this is simply to hold the two terminals or replace them if they disappear or misbehave until the illness or feeling has abated. One can handle worries in this fashion. One simply puts up one worry and then duplicates it, facing itself out in front of him, and the thought discharges against the thought until the worry and the emotion connected with the worry disappear. Thought, emotion, and effort can be dissipated by double terminaling in this fashion. It is again remarked that this is a limited technique and should not be continued endlessly as an end in itself. 30 or 40 hours of double terminaling is much more than enough. The route pointed out by Scientology 8008 is a better route than double terminaling. Double terminaling is relegated to the level of assist and changing one's state of mind. Double terminaling doubt against doubt undermines and gets at the bottom of every circuit. Thus, it, as a technique, should not be entirely neglected. Chapter 8. Communication. What are the values of affinity, communication, and reality with relation to each other from the standpoint of behavior or the auditor? Affinity is type of energy and can be produced at will. Reality is agreement. Too much agreement under duress brings about the vanishment of one's entire consciousness. Communication, however, is far more important than affinity or reality, for it is the operation, the action by which one experiences emotion and by which one agrees. Communication is not only the modus operandi, it is the heart of life and is by thousands of percent the senior in importance to affinity and reality. And this is easily demonstrated, for only if the auditor concentrates on communication can he resolve problems, predict behavior, and alter or control minds. Sharply, then, alert to this value of communication and do not go on trying to make a thirst for love make love all, or a hope for agreement the all. The important answer is found always in the modus operandi of communication. Communication is at once the strongest hope for resolving any problem of behavior and the weakest commodity in the case one confronts. Fail to observe the singular magnitude of communication when evaluated against agreement and affinity, and fail with cases. It almost does not matter what is communicated if it is communicated. The one test of aberration is communication lag index. How long does it take to get an answer from the pre-clear? He is as aberrated as he takes time. He has in the degree that he handles particles. The handling of particles, of motion, is communication. Reality is the consideration of particles. Affinity is the opinion about particles and sensation. Consideration is not beingness. Opinion is not beingness. Only communication ranks with beingness. The only accurate test of whether or not a case is improved is whether or not there is a communication change. By communication change, we also mean perception change. Perception is all, and any form of communication is known alone by perception. A thetan can be what he can see. He can see what he can be. If he can't see it as a thetan, not as Mest eyes, he can't be it. If he can't be it, he can't see it. A viewpoint puts out anchor points. It now has space. How does it know it has anchor points out? Because it can see them. How does it know there are anchor points at all? Only because it can see them. Then how does it know it has space? Because it can perceive. How does it perceive? By knowing. By knowing a datum? No, by being certain. Knowingness is being certainness. One is as certain as he can communicate. He can communicate as well as he can be. Further, one is as responsible as one can communicate. One is not responsible for that with which he cannot communicate. One will fight only that with which he cannot communicate. How does one communicate? A method of permissible communication is via Mest. One places his ability into hands, eyes, etc., and by sound waves, light particles, and others, communicates. He has put the blame on Mest. Actually, all these particles are his own immediate creation by agreed-upon, implicitly believed ritual. His body, even the sun, is there because he co-believes with many other viewpoints that they are there. He mocks up the Mest universe continually, as can be tested by comparison of a Mest universe terminal with a mock-up terminal, many times, each time noting the difference. Duplicating, see earlier text, universes. The circuit that automatically mocks up Mest comes to view and under control. Get an invalid by whatever means, pleasant or unpleasant, into communication with a withered limb and it will heal. It requires hours, perhaps, of massage, and the massage or sensation must be sufficiently irregular to continue to command his attention. But it will work, not because of faith, but because of continuously commanding the invalid to perceive his leg. There are many levels of communication. The best is self-determined communication by postulate containing no effort, but any is better than none. The best communication is by the thetan's own creation, dispatch, and return of dimension points. That which he thus perceives is really real to him, and he takes full responsibility for it. He puts out golden clouds of flitter in order to so perceive. Simply by putting out, by postulate, this flitter, the occluded case can, after several times trying, unmask the black facsimile behind which he is hiding. This is direct thetan communication, the best. Beingness, communication, space are in action synonyms. The 0.2 case has no space. Get him to communicate, he has space. He may feel his body and facsimiles are rock hard. Get him to communicate, to waste anchor points in expanded Gita, following text SOP 8, and be things, and he becomes less aberrated, less in pain, less solid. If a person cannot communicate, if he has a long communication index lag, he has no great beingness, no space. Spacation, SOP 8 solves it. Imitating beingness solves it. Doing routine mock-ups of any kind solves it. For these are anchor points which make space, and any communication betterment process solves it. Even finding present time solves it. Thus, see the role that communication plays in the game called existence. Part 2. Standard Operating Procedure 8. Operating Thetan. Chapter 9. Standard Operating Procedure 8. In using this operating procedure, the auditor should give every heed to the auditor's code. Further, he should audit the pre-clear in the presence of a third person or another auditor. This operating procedure is best done by an auditor who has been thoroughly trained in all processes involving the reduction of the past and its incidents. The untrained auditor may encounter manifestations with which only a professional auditor would be familiar. This operating procedure retains the most workable methods of preceding procedures and in itself emphasizes positive gain and the present and future, rather than negative gain of eradication of the past. The Thetan, exteriorized and rehabilitated, can handle and remedy, by direct address of his own energy to the body and the removal of old energy deposits, all body malfunctions or mental aberrations attacked by older processes. The goal of this procedure is not the rehabilitation of the body, but of the Thetan. Rehabilitation of a body incidentally ensues. The goal of this procedure is operating Thetan, a higher goal than earlier procedures. The auditor tests the pre-clear for each step from step 1 on until he finds a step the pre-clear can do. The auditor then completes this step and then the next higher step until the Thetan is exteriorized. With the Thetan exteriorized, the auditor now completes all 7 steps regardless of the steps performed before exteriorization. He may complete all these steps and all parts of these steps rapidly, but they must be done to obtain a theta clear, and they must be done thoroughly to obtain an operating Thetan. The techniques involved herein were tested on a wide variety of cases. It is doubtful if any earlier process of any kind in any age has been as thoroughly validated as this operating procedure. However, it works only when used as stated. Disorganized fragments of this material, given other names and emphases, may be found to be harmful. Irresponsible and untrained use of this procedure is not authorized. Capricious or quasi-religious exteriorization of the Thetan for other purposes than the restoration of his ability and self-determinism should be resisted by any being. The goal of this process is freedom for the individual to the betterment of the many. Step 1. Ask pre-clear to be 3 feet behind his head. If stable there, have him be in various pleasant places until any feeling of scarcity of viewpoints is resolved. Then have him be in several undesirable places, then several pleasant places. Then have him be in a slightly dangerous place, then in more and more dangerous places until he can sit in the center of the sun. Be sure to observe a gradient scale of ugliness and dangerousness of places. Do not let the pre-clear fail. Then do remaining steps with pre-clear exteriorized. Step 2. Have pre-clear mock up own body. If he does this easily and clearly, have him mock up own body until he slips out of it. When he is exteriorized and knows it thoroughly, the condition of all exteriorization, do step 1. If his mock-up was not clear, go to step 3 immediately. Step 3. Spacation. Have pre-clear close his eyes and find upper corners of the room. Have him sit there, not thinking, refusing to think of anything, interested only in the corners until he is completely exteriorized without strain. Then do a spacation, constructing own space with 8 anchor points and holding it stable without effort, and go to step 1. If pre-clear was unable to locate corners of the room easily with his eyes closed, go to step 4. Step 4. Expanded Gita. This is an extension of give and take processing. Test pre-clear to see if he can get a mock-up he can see, no matter how vague. then have him waste, accept under duress, desire, and finally be able to take or leave alone each of the items listed below. He does this with mock-ups or ideas. He must do the sequence of waste, etc., in the order given here for each item. He wastes it by having it at remote distances in places where it will do no good, being used or done or observed by something which cannot appreciate it. When he is able to waste it in vast quantities, the auditor then has him accept it in mock-up form until he no longer is antagonistic to having to accept it, even when it is unpleasant and great force is applied to make him take it. Then again with mock-ups, he must be able to bring himself to desire it even in its worst form. Then, by mock-ups of it in its most desirable form, he must come to be able to leave it entirely alone or take it in its worst form without caring. Expanded Gita remedies contra-survival abundance and scarcity. It will be found that before one can accept a very scarce to him thing, he has to give it away. A person with a milk allergy must be able to give away, in mock-up, enormous quantities of milk, wasting it before he can accept any himself. The items in this list are compounded of several years of isolating what factors were more important to minds than others. The list lacks very few of the very important items, if any. Additions to or subtractions from this list should not be attempted. Viewpoint, work, and pain should be heavily and often stressed and given priority. Next in importance are incidents, looking, sensation, talking, and knowing. Waste, have forced upon, desire, be able to give or take in that order each of the following. Order of items here is random. Viewpoint, work, pain, incidents, looking, sensation, talking, knowing, beauty, motion, engrams, ugliness, logic, pictures, confinement, money, parents, blackness, police, light, explosions, bodies, degradation, male bodies, female bodies, babies, children male, children female, strange and peculiar bodies, dead bodies, affinity, love, agreement, beautiful bodies, people, attention, admiration, force, energy, lightning, unconsciousness, problems, antagonism, reverence, fear, objects, time, eating human bodies, sound, grief, beautiful sadness, hidden influences, hidden communications, doubts, faces, dimension points, anchor points, anger, apathy, ideas, enthusiasm, disagreement, hate, sex, eating parents, eaten by parents, eating men, eaten by men, eating women, eaten by women, starts, spoken communications, written communications, stillness, exhaustion, stopping motion women, stopping motion men, changing motion women, changing motion men, changing motion babies, changing motion children, starting motion men, starting motion women, starting motion children, starting motion objects, starting motion self, omens, wickedness, forgiveness, play, games, machinery, touch, traffic, stolen goods, stolen pictures, homes, blasphemy, caves, medicine, glass, mirrors, pride, musical instruments, dirty words written on paper, in air, space, wild animals, pets, birds, air, water, food, milk, garbage, gases, excreta, rooms, beds, punishment, boredom, confusion, soldiers, executioners, doctors, judges, psychiatrists, liquor, alcohol, drugs, masturbation, rewards, heat, cold, forbidden things, God, the devil, spirits, bacteria, glory, dependence, responsibility, wrongness, rightness, insanity, sanity, faith, Christ, death, rank, position, poverty, maps, irresponsibility, greetings, farewells, credit, loneliness, jewels, teeth, genitalia, complications, help, pretense, truth, lies, assurance, contempt, predictability, unpredictability, vacuums, white clouds, black clouds, unattainables, hidden things, worry, revenge, textbooks, kisses, the past, the future, the present, arms, stomachs, bowels, mouths, cigarettes, smoke, urine, vomit, convulsions, saliva, flowers, semen, blackboards, fireworks, toys, vehicles, dolls, audiences, doors, walls, weapons, blood, ambitions, illusions, betrayal, ridicule, hope, happiness, mothers, fathers, grandparents, sons, planets, moons, waiting, silence, not knowing, fact one, remembering, forgetting, auditing, minds, fame, power, accidents, illnesses, approval, tiredness, acting, drama, costumes, sleep, holding things apart, holding things together, destroying things, sending things away, making things go fast, making things appear, making things vanish, convictions, stability, changing people, silent men, silent women, silent children, symbols of weakness, symbols of force, disabilities, education, languages, bestiality, homosexuality, invisible bodies, invisible acts, invisible scenes, accepting things back, rules, players, restimulation, sexual restimulation, space reduction, size reduction, entertainment, cheerfulness, freedom for others to talk, act, feel pain, be sad, thetans, personalities, cruelty, organizations, nothing. Warning: should your pre-clear become unstable or upset during this process, take him to step 6, then return to this list. Comment: the mind is sufficiently complicated that it can be expected to have computations on almost all the above. Thus, there is no single clearing button, and search for it is at the dictate of a circuit, the mechanism of circuits being to search for something hidden. Thus, your pre-clear may begin to compute and philosophize and seek to find the button that will release all this. All this releases all the buttons, so tell him to relax and go on with the process every time he starts to compute. Note, running the above will bring to the surface without further attention the computation on the case and the service facsimile. Do not audit these. Run expanded Gita. Step 5. Present time differentiation, exteriorization by scenery. Have pre-clear with his body's eyes study and see the difference between similar real objects, such as the 2 legs of a chair, the spaces between the back, 2 cigarettes, 2 trees, 2 girls. He must see and study the objects. It is not enough to remember the objects. The definition of a case 5 is no mock-ups, only blackness. Have him continue this process until he is alert. Use liberally and often. Then exteriorize by having the pre-clear close his eyes and move actual places on earth under him, preferably places he has not been. Have him bring these up to him, find 2 similar things in the scene, and observe the difference between them. Move him over oceans and cities until he is certain that he is exteriorized. Then, preferably while exteriorized, have him do step 1. This case has to know before he can be. His viewpoint is in the past. Give him present time viewpoints until he is a step 1 by the methods given for step 5. Comment: present time differentiation is a very good general technique and resolves chronic somatics and improves tone. Assume other people's viewpoints as a drill, not what they think about things, but as they look at things in the material universe. Attempt to be in the location of a leaf, blade of grass, car headlamp, etc., and view the universe. Step 6. ARC Straightwire. ARC Straightwire using next to last list of self-analysis in Scientology, which asks the pre-clear to recall something really real to him, etc. Then use the lists in self-analysis. This level is the neurotic. It is identified by the pre-clear having mock-ups which will not persist or which won't go away. Use also present time differentiation. Then go to step 4. At any drop in tone, return case to step 6. Step 7. Psychotic cases, whether in or out of body. The psychotic appears to be in such desperate straits that the auditor often errs in thinking desperate measures are necessary. Use the lightest possible methods. Give case space and freedom where possible. Have psychotic imitate, not mock up, various things. Have him do present-time differentiation. Get him to tell the difference between things by actual touch. Have him locate, differentiate, and touch things that are really real to him, real objects or items. If inaccessible, mimic him with own body, whatever he does, until he comes into communication. Have him locate corners of the room and hold them without thinking. As soon as his communication is up, go to step 6. But be very sure he changes any mock-up around until he knows it is a mock-up, that it exists, and that he himself made it. Do not run engrams. He is psychotic because viewpoints in present time are so scarce that he has gone into the past for viewpoints which at least he knew existed. By present-time differentiation, by tactile on objects, restore his idea of an abundance of viewpoint in present time. If he has been given electric shock, do not process it or any other brutality. Work him for very brief periods, for his attention span is short. Always work psychotics with another auditor or a companion present. Note: all steps for all cases. If in doubt as to condition of case, test with step 6. Note: an operating thetan must also be able to manufacture particles of admiration and force in abundance. Appendix to SOP 8, Number 1. Any alterations in SOP 8 will appear in appendices as they are expected to be minor and to make no radical change in the design of the steps in general. Step 1. The operating thetan must be able to manufacture and experience to his complete satisfaction all sensations including pain in mock-up form and all energies such as admiration and force. It will be found that some Step 1 cases will not be able to manufacture admiration particles. Step 2. Be very careful not to make a lower step pre-clear while still in a body mock up his own body too long. Any mock-up will appear if it is simply put there often enough and long enough, providing the pre-clear doesn't spin in the process. The long-term manufacture of mock-ups of one's own body and of admiration may not produce quite the results expected. Communication lines which should remain shut may open with bad results. These lines that are shut appear like hard black cords to the pre-clear. There are 2 types of techniques in general: positive gain and negative gain, as defined in the above text. Positive can be administered in unlimited amounts without harm. Negative gain techniques, such as the reduction of engrams and locks, double terminaling, black and white, are often limited in the length of time they can be given. After a few hundred hours of early type auditing, the case could be found to slump. Thus we have in positive gain the unlimited technique, which improves the analytical mind. In negative gain, we have a limited, in terms of the time it can be audited, technique. In SOP 8, the following steps and processes may be audited without limit. Step 1, Step 3, Step 5, Step 6, Step 7. The following steps are limited and should not be audited many hours without changing to another type, unlimited, for a while, after which the following steps could be resumed. Step 2. Step 4. The following steps can be used on groups. Step 3, Step 5, Part 1 and Part 2, Step 6, Step 7. Effective procedures. The following is a list of effective procedures as of April 28, 1953. If a procedure is labeled U, it is unlimited and could be audited thousands of hours and only improve a case. If labeled L, it is limited and must be handled with discretion and alternated with an unlimited technique. If it is labeled S, it is seldom used. If labeled A, it is used today in assists. Engram running, Book 1, L.A. Grief and other secondaries, L.A. Recommended. Lock scanning, L.A. Emotional curves, L.S. Service facsimile chain as engrams, L.S. Effort processing, L.A. ARC straight wire, science of survival, U.A. Negative exteriorization, L. Ridge running, L. Dead-X, L.S. Current lifetime used for fast releases. Recommended. Motivator overt, L.S. Matched terminals in mock-ups, L.S. Double terminals in mock-ups, L.A. Positive exteriorization, Step 1, SOP 8, U. Recommended. Own body mock-up. Step 2, SOP 8, L. Recommended. Spacation. Step 3, SOP 8 and general usage. U. Recommended. Expanded Gita. Step 4, SOP 8, L. Recommended. Present time differentiation. Step 5, SOP 8, U. Recommended. Exteriorization by scenery. Step 5-2, SOP 8, U. Recommended. Self-analysis in Scientology. Step 6, SOP 8, U. Recommended. Imitation of things. Step 7, SOP 8, U. Recommended. Creative processing, as in this book, Scientology 8008, U. Recommended. Additional note on Expanded Gita. The governing rule here is that the pre-clear craves exactly what he has and must waste whatever he doesn't have. It is better, in the opinion of a Thetan, to have anything no matter how bad, rather than have nothing. He craves those things which are scarce, but he can't even have those things which are scarcest. In order to have what he cannot have, he first must be able to waste it, in mock-up, in quantity. An abbreviated form of this process would involve over and over wasting, accepting under duress, the following items in turn. Try first. Healthy bodies, strong bodies, good perception, good recall, viewpoints, pain, work, freedom for others to have viewpoints. The pre-clear cannot be free himself until he has freed others. This does not work out in the MEST universe, but it works out in mock-ups. Circuits go into action on many of these processes. Don't permit your pre-clear to think. Don't be interested in what he thinks. Failure to follow this rule will cause the process to fail. Comparison of MEST objects to mock-ups resolves why Thetans make facsimiles and discloses to the pre-clear the mechanism. This is a good process and can be done at step 4 as an additional part of 4. Have pre-clear make a mock-up the same as a MEST object and put the mock-up alongside of the MEST object, and then compare them. The mock-ups will gradually improve, then key out the mechanism that makes facsimiles. Appendix to SOP 8, Number 2, Certainty Processing. The anatomy of maybe consists of uncertainties and is resolved by the processing of certainties. It is not resolved by the processing of uncertainties. This is Scientology is recommended to you for your processing and your public representation. It contains the anatomy of certainty. An uncertainty is held in suspense solely because the pre-clear is holding on so hard to certainties. The basic thing he is holding on to is, I have a solution, I have no solution. One of these is positive, the other is negative. A complete positive and a complete negative are, alike, a certainty. The basic certainty is, there is something, there is nothing. A person can be certain there is something, he can be certain there is nothing. There is something, there is nothing resolves chronic somatics in this order. One gets the pre-clear to have the center of the somatics say, there is something here, there is nothing here. Then he gets the center of the somatic to say, there is nothing there is something there. Then the auditor has the pre-clear say toward the somatic, there is something there is nothing there. And then he gets the pre-clear to say, about himself, there is something here, there is nothing here. This is a very fast resolution of chronic somatics. Quite ordinarily, 3 or 4 minutes of this will resolve an acute state, and 15 or 20 minutes of it will resolve a chronic state. This matter of certainties goes further. It has been determined by my recent investigations that the reason behind what is happening is the desire of a cause to bring about an effect. Something is better than nothing, anything is better than nothing. Any circuit, any effect, anything is better than nothing. If you will match terminals in brackets, there is nothing, you will find that a lot of your pre-clears become very ill. This should be turned around into, there is something. The way one does matched terminals is to have the pre-clear facing the pre-clear or his father facing his father. In other words, 2 of each of anything, one facing the other. These 2 things will discharge one into the other, thus running off the difficulty. By bracket, we mean, of course, running this with the pre-clear putting them up as himself to himself, as though they were put up by somebody else, the somebody else facing the somebody else. And the matched terminal again put up by others facing others. The clue to all this is positive and negative in terms of certainties. The positive plus the negative in conflict make an uncertainty. A great number of combinations of things can be run. Here's a list of the combinations. The button behind sex is, I can begin life anew. I cannot begin life anew. I can make life persist. I cannot make life persist. I can stop life. I cannot stop life. I can change life. I cannot change life. I can start life. I cannot start life. A very effective process is something wrong, blank. Nothing wrong, blank, with you, me, them, my mind, communication, various allies. A very basic resolution of the lack of space of an individual is to locate these people and these objects which you've been using as anchor points, such as father, mother, and so forth, and putting them into matched terminal brackets with this. There is father. There is no father. There is grandfather. There is no grandfather. In the compulsive line, this can be changed to, there must be no father. There must be a father. One takes all the allies of an individual and runs them in this fashion. The basic law underneath this is that a person becomes the effect of anything upon which he has had to depend. This would tell you immediately that the sixth dynamic, the mess universe, is the largest dependency of the individual. This can be run out, but then any dynamic can be run out in this fashion. There is myself, there is no self, and so on up the dynamics. Any dynamic is preventing me from communicating. Any dynamic is not preventing me from communicating is intensely effective. Any such technique can be varied by applying the sub-zero scale. One runs any certainty out because he knows that for this certainty there is an opposite negative certainty, and that between these lies a maybe, and that the maybe stays in suspense in time. The basic operation of the reactive mind is to solve problems. It is based on uncertainties about observation. Thus, one runs out certainties of observation. The most general shotgun technique would have to do with, there is sex, there is no sex. There is force, there is no force. This could be run, of course, in terms of matched terminal brackets or even as concepts. But one must not neglect to run the overt act phenomenon, which is to say, getting somebody else getting the concept. The processing out of certainties would then embrace, I have a solution, there is no solution. These two opposite ends would take care of any individual who was hung on the track with some solution, for that solution had its opposite. People who have studied medicine begin by being certain that medicine works and end by being certain that medicine doesn't work. They begin by studying psychology on a supposition that it is the solution and finish up believing that it is not the solution. This also happens to superficial students of Dianetics and Scientology. Thus, one should also run Dianetics is a solution, Dianetics is not the solution. This would get one off the maybe on the subject. We are essentially processing communication systems. The entire process of auditing is concentrated upon withdrawing communications from the preclear as predicated on the basis of the body, and the preclear cannot handle communications. Thus, the preclear can handle communications, the preclear cannot handle communications, is a shotgun technique which resolves maybes about his communications. An intensely interesting aspect of certainty processing is that it shows up intimately where the preclear is aberrated. Here is the overall basic technique. One runs, there is blank. There is not blank. The following: communication, talk, letters, love, agreement, sex, pain, work, bodies, minds, curiosity, control, enforcement, compulsion, inhibition, food, money, people, ability, beauty, ugliness, presence, and both the top and bottom of the chart of attitudes, positive and negative in each one. Basic in all this is the urge of the preclear to produce an effect. So one can run, I can produce an effect upon Mama. I cannot produce an effect upon Mama, and so forth for all allies, and one will resolve the fixations of attention on the part of the preclear. Thus, fixations of attention are resolved by certainty processing, processing out the production of effect. One can occasionally, if he so desires, process the direct center of the maybe, which is to say doubt itself, in terms of matched terminals. This, however, is risky, for it throws the preclear into a general state of doubt. The key to any such processing is the recovery of viewpoints. I can have grandfather's viewpoint, I cannot have grandfather's viewpoint, and so on, particularly with sexual partners, will prove intensely interesting on a case. There are viewpoints, there are no viewpoints. I have a viewpoint, I don't have a viewpoint. Blank has a viewpoint, blank has no viewpoint resolves problems. One should also realize that when one is processing facsimiles, he is processing at one time energy, sensation, and aesthetics. The facsimile is a picture. The pre-clear is being affected by pictures mainly, and so, there are no pictures, there are pictures. Forward the case toward handling pictures, which is to say, facsimiles. A person tends to ally himself with somebody whom he considers capable of producing greater effects than himself. So, I, she, he, it can create greater effects. I, she, he, it can create no effect should be run. When one is processing, he is trying to withdraw communications. Reach and withdraw are the two fundamentals in the action of theta. Must reach and can't reach, must withdraw and can't withdraw, are compulsions which, when run in combination, produce the manifestation of insanity in a pre-clear. I can reach, I can't reach. I can withdraw, I can't withdraw, open up into the fact that remembering and forgetting are dependent upon the ability to reach and withdraw. You will find that a pre-clear will respond to you must blank, or you can blank, you must not blank, or you cannot blank. There is blank, there is not blank, forgetting and remembering. The only reason a person is hanging onto a body or facsimile is that he has lost his belief in his ability to create. The rehabilitation of this ability to create is resolved, for instance, in a person who has had an ambition to write with, I can write, I cannot write, and so forth. The loss of this creative ability made the person hang on to what he had. The fact that a pre-clear has forgotten how to or no longer can himself generate force makes him hold on to stores of force. These are very often mistaken by the auditor for facsimiles. The pre-clear doesn't care for the facsimile. He simply cares for the force contained in the facsimile because he knows he doesn't have any force anymore. It should be kept in mind that reaching and withdrawing are intensely productive of reaction in a pre-clear. But that pre-clear who does not respond to reaching and withdrawing and certainty thereon is hung up in a very special condition. He is trying to prevent something from happening. He also prevents auditing from happening. He has lost allies, he has had accidents, and he's hung up at all those points on the track where he feels he should have prevented something from happening. This is resolved by running, I must prevent it from happening, I cannot prevent it from happening. I must regain control, I must lose all control. Blackness is the desire to be an effect and the inability to be cause. I can create grandfather or ally. I cannot create grandfather or ally solves scarcity of allies. I want to be aware. I want no awareness is a technique which is basic in attitudes. Run this as others in matched terminal brackets or an expanded Gita. Certainty there is a past, certainty there is no past. Certainty there is a future, certainty there is no future. Certainty it means something else. Certainty it does not mean anything else. Certainty there is space, certainty there is no space. Certainty there is energy, certainty there is no energy. Certainty there are objects, certainty there are no objects.